than previously recognized. Dr. Kyle McCarter of Johns Hopkins University, a specialist in ancient Semitic script, said the research should settle any controversy over these inscriptions. A close study by Dr. McCarter of Johns Hopkins University showed that the handwriting is of the earliest style of Hebrew script, and the letters are from the Old Hebrew alphabet, which had ceased to be used after the destruction of Jerusalem, so it had to exist in First Temple. Whoever owned these amulets lived in First Temple times. Later Hebrew writing used the adopted Aramaic alphabet. There was an exception in the time of Roman rule, around the 1st century BC, AD, when the archaic Hebrew Paleo script and letters were revived and used widely in official documents. But Dr. McCarter noted telling attributes of the strokes of the letters and spelling on the amulets, he said, ruled out the more recent date for its inscriptions. Words in the revived Hebrew writing would have included letters including vowels, meaning in the time of the Romans there was a resurgence in the use of Paleo-Hebrew among official Hebraic documents. But though that revival in the Paleo-Hebrew was with added nikudot, or vowels, and these have no vowels, therefore authenticating the fact that they go back to the First Temple time. Follow me? Okay, so, words in the revived Hebrew writing would have included letters including vowel sounds. This benediction found, the scholar said, was written with words spelled entirely with consonants, the authentic archaic way of Paleo-Hebrew. The two silver scrolls were found in 1979, buried deep inside a burial cave, a tomb, a cave, in a hillside known as Kfar Hinnom. Write that down, Kfar Hinnom, southwest of the Old City. If that sounds familiar, it should. There are many references in Scripture to the valley of the son of Hinnom, where the pagans would cause their children to pass through the fire in sacrifice to Molech, Chemosh, and all the false deities. So most of those pagan sacrificial rites of child sacrifice would take place in the valley of the son of Hinnom. Kfar Hinnom was a town, a Jewish town built on the southwest side of Yerushalayim in that area, therefore called Kfar, or the village of Hinnom, close to the Hinnom Valley, where we get the Hebrew word for hell. What is the Hebrew word for hell? Sheol, right? Wrong. Sheol means grave. The Hebrew word for hell is Gehenna, or the valley of the burning. Gehenna, or we get Gehenna. Gehenna is not a literal word, it is a definite article, or the valley of Gehenna. So in Hebraic understanding, there's no, Sheol is the grave, it's not hell. Hell is likened unto the garbage dump because they used to sacrifice their children to pagan deities, and so they used the same valley later to dump the garbage in Jerusalem. They figure it's already stenched and it's already contaminated. So in ancient Judea, they used to, when they weren't burning children in the valley of Gehenna, they used to dump their garbage and burn their garbage. That's where we get the Hebrew term Gehenna. So if you ask a traditional Jewish rabbi what's the Hebrew word for hell, he'll tell you it's Gehenna. Gehenna. Okay, let's continue. The two scrolls were found in a hillside known as Kfar Hinnom, west of the Old City, southwest of the Old City of Yerushalayim. Dr. Gabriel Barkay, the founder of the amulets, documenting the context of the discovery, noted that the artifacts were at the back of the tomb, embedded in pottery and other material from the 7th or 6th century BCE. Such caves were reused for burials over many centuries. Remember I told you that? Gathered to his father's meat, clean up the bones, put them with the father's bones, and clear out the bench for the body of the children. And in a way that's cool, because this way the children don't have to go look for burial plots for themselves or whatever. It's understood that where I'm buried, you'll be buried, which is what Ruth said to Naomi, where you're buried, I'll bury. She wasn't kidding. It didn't just mean in the same neighborhood, it meant in the same tomb. Because I want to be gathered to you like you're going to be gathered to your ancestors. Baruch Hashem. So near the back of the tomb was embedded pottery, listen, and other material, and these caves were reused over and over again for burial throughout many centuries. Near this tomb's entrance were artifacts from the 4th century, but nothing so recent remains in the undisturbed recesses. It took Dr. Barkay 7 years, another 7 years, from 1979 till 7 years later, what's that, 86? Before he felt sure enough of what he had to announce regarding the details of the discovery. Even then, for all their microscopic examination of the inscriptions at the Israel Museum in Yerushalayim, scholars remained frustrated by the many unreadable words and lines. What were they able to read? The Aaronic benediction. They weren't able to read the other 16 lines. Make sense? But about a decade ago, Dr. Gabriel Barkay, who found the amulets, enlisted the help of Dr. Zuckerman, whose team had earned a reputation for achieving the near impossible in photographing illegible ancient documents. Working with scientists from NASA Jet Propulsion Laboratory, Dr. Zuckerman's group used advanced infrared imaging systems enhanced by electronic, camera, and computer imaging technology, spoken about in Daniel 12:4, to draw out previously invisible writing on a fragment of the Dead Sea Scrolls. The researchers also pioneered electronic techniques for reproducing missing pieces of letters on documents. By examining similar letters elsewhere in the text, they were able to recognize half a letter and reconstruct the rest of the letter in its own peculiar style. So the folks that were used in this digital technology were the same people used in the Dead Sea Scrolls. Do you understand?
Yeah.
Same ones who try to decipher the Dead Sea Scrolls are the same ones who were used here to decipher these official documents. Amen. We learned a lot from working on the Dead Sea Scrolls, Dr. Zuckerman said. At first, a processing job like this would send your computers into cardiac arrest. We had to wait for computer technology to catch up with what we needed. Meaning they had these amulets since 1979, but they didn't have the enhanced computer digital technology that we have today to help them see what else was on there. They can read the Aaronic benediction, which already made the oldest verse, full verse of mankind, predating the Dead Sea Scrolls. And I'll tell you what Yahweh showed me when I was meditating on this morning, and I'll save that for the end. We learned a lot from the Dead Sea Scrolls, but we had to wait for computer technology to catch up with our needs, Dr. Zuckerman said. To get higher definition for photographs of the inscriptions, Ken Zuckerman applied an old photographer's technique called light painting. I don't know what that is, but someone may know. Light painting. Brought up to date by use of fiber optic technology. He used a handheld light in an otherwise dark room to illuminate a spot on the artifact during the time of exposure. In addition, he photographed the artifact at different angles, which made the scratched letters shine in stark relief. They shined out of the darkness, okay? In stark relief. The next step was to convert the pictures to digital form, making possible computer processing that brought out the subtleties of the surface almost at the micron level. This analysis was particularly successful in joining a partial letter stroke on one side of the crack with the rest of the letter stroke on the other side of the crack. Do you understand? The item was cracked and it's joined together those sections on both sides of the crack. It also enabled researchers to restore fragments of letters to full legibility by matching them with clear letters from elsewhere in the text. In this way, the researchers filled in the more of the letters and words of the benediction itself, and for the first time deciphered meaningful words and phrases in the lines preceding the benediction. Now listen, check this out. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Come on. Scholars were particularly intrigued by a statement on the smaller artifact of the two artifacts. It reads, "May he or she," and then the name, "be blessed by or the warrior, helper, and rebuker of all evil.
Wow. Ooh, warrior.
You listen to me, you Hashem people. You better get with the program before the program overtakes you. Yahweh is tired of playing games. He's tired of your mixed worship. He's tired of your mixed services. He's tired of your strange worship. He's tired of your strange fire. It's time for you to get with the program, because now is the time, now is the set time to favor Zion. And if you're still mixing your worship, and you still have some of Hashem, and some of gold, and some of Lord, with the through Yahweh thrown in to relieve your guilty conscience, I urge you and I beseech you by the name of the Savior, now is the time to fully make the Shuvah.
Proclaim the name.
Yahweh says, I will cause, through knowledge, the internet superhighway, digitally enhanced photography, I'll cause it so that the facts will line up with the Torah. Because the facts are the Torah. But since you're looking for facts in the earth, I'll make all the facts of your civilized world match up with the Torah. Then what will your excuse be? You're going to still insist that his name is not Yahweh? You're still going to insist that his name is Jehovah? What are you going to do then? When the earth starts talking, when the rocks start talking, when the earth cries out. Yeshua told the Perushim, if these keep silent, the earth, the stone, and the rocks themselves will cry out. What does that mean? That they're going to grow wings and show up on Sesame Street and start talking?
Archaeology.
Through archaeology, the rocks will talk. If you reject my personal appearance, 2,000 years after I'm gone, the same rocks that I'm walking on now, these rocks will talk if these shut up.
Can you repeat that? Sure.
That was a prophecy, silly. That wasn't just a rebuke of the Perushim. If you will not receive a living testimony from me and the hundreds of Talmidim following me in my triumphal entry, not on Palm Sunday, but on Yom Rishon.
Yes.
Don't get me started. I feel like getting started. I'm not gonna get started. Then fine, no problem. One day I'll make these rocks and these stones cry out.
Hallelujah.
And you'll be faced with facts that confirm the scriptures. What are you gonna do then? Baruch Hashem. And these are non-born again Jews that are talking about this. I'm sure Zuckerman and Gabriel Barkay, who's a professor at Bar Ilan University in Jerusalem, are not Yahwists, and neither are they Nazarene Israelites. They're neither Yahwists or Nazarene Israelites. And here they are saying that the amulets found from the first temple times doesn't say Hashem. Well, I'm shocked. Aren't you shocked that it doesn't say Hashem? I could have told you that without the archaeology. But Yahweh says, don't worry. I will cause my name to be known. Don't worry. Even if they don't accept your translation. Even if they don't accept your Bible. The rocks will cry out.
Hashem Yahweh.
Baruch Hashem Yahweh. Baruch Hashem Yahweh. So this amulet had a statement above so on the bottom was the Aaronic benediction. And right above was this. May he or she be blessed by Yud Hey, Vav Hey, the warrior, helper, and rebuker of evil.
Warrior, helper.
So they knew the power of the name of Yahweh. Which is why the enemy has tried to destroy the truth that the Father's name is Yahweh. Because there's power in that name. There's wondrous working power. Wondrous working power. Not just wondrous working power in the blood of the Lamb. There's power in the true name, everlasting name of Yahweh.
Hallelujah.
Which is why the enemy has worked overtime to eradicate that name.
Right. Yes.
Hallelujah.
Yes, yes.
Yahweh says what appears to be a temporary setback, even the earth will begin to cry out. So on this amulet, through modern, digitally enhanced technology, they said, may the wearer, may he, she, whoever wore it, amen? May he, she, whoever it was, male or female. And of course, the perverts will try to twist this too. You see? They were bisexual. Because it said, may he, she.
Yeah.
They'll try that. That's what I'm saying, don't come against us. Well, not only does it show that Yahweh was his name, it showed that they were, you know, they switch hitters. Yeah. Because it said he, she. See how the enemy will twist anything?
Oh, yeah. They can get all of those.
So, scholars, listen to this. Scholars were particularly intrigued by a statement on the smaller artifact that read, may he, or obviously, or she, be blessed by Yahweh. Would Yahweh ever bless a sodomite? Of course not.
No.
Well, brother, I resent that. They're gay. Listen, honey, there ain't nothing gay about them. Sodomite. S-O-D-O-M-I-T. Sodomita. Put that in your homosexual pipe and smoke it.
Gay, you know.
That's right.
That's what Yahweh calls that. Sodomy.
Gay, you know.
Gay. Cute. That's where gays go. Gay, you know. Sorry, you don't like that? Don't get my tapes. Go hire another false prophet to tickle your ears.
That's right. That's right.
Scholars were particularly intrigued by a statement on the smaller artifact they read. May he or she be blessed by Yahweh. Yud, He, Vav, He. In Paleo-Hebrew. They stopped using Paleo at the time of the Babylonian exile. This is a first temple artifact showing that the common man, forget about the priests, forget about the Kohanim, forget about the Levim, the common man protected themselves from evil spirits and took authority over the forces of darkness by carrying the name of Yahweh around their neck. Powerful stuff, man.
Yahweh.
Powerful stuff. That's why I had to bring this to your attention. This came up the day before Sukkot in the New York Times. And what's amazing is everybody's saying this artifact is true, even though they didn't do the research. They can't take personal credit, which is very unusual in the scholarly community. They're still saying it's true. These are coming from traditional Jews who don't use Yahweh. These are coming from people, scholars, who if they don't do the research, don't approve the research. These are coming from people who are not Nazarene, born again, and they're saying everything we're saying.
Send them a copy of your text,
Baruch Hashem Yahweh.
so you'll understand what they found.
Now check this out. Now let's get, the article continues. Referring to God, okay, listen to this. Referring to God, Yahweh, referring to the God, Yahweh, he mentions the word here, is in the article, as the rebuker of evil, is similar to the language used in the Bible and the Dead Sea Scrolls, scholars say. Well, I'll be darned. Well, I'll be. Oh, you mean it's similar to the language used in the Bible? Meaning, in Exodus 15, Yahweh is called Ish Milchama. Yahweh is called the man of war. Yeah, brother. And then traditional Judaism says, well, you know, we can't accept this Yeshua fellow. Why? Because we know Yahweh is not a man. Really? Well, in Shemot 15, it says, Yahweh is an Ish Milchama. Yahweh is a man of war. Man of war. In other words, man of war is not a racehorse.
Amen.
You ain't a jellyfish either.
What'd you have for breakfast, man? I want some. Oh, you had crackers in the kitchen. Woo! Anointed crackers. Baruch Hashem Yahweh. He's not a jellyfish. He's not a racehorse. Yahweh is a man. Well, brother, no, that's just a metaphor. That's just, I don't care if it's a metaphor, a reaphor, or a 2x4. The Bible calls the Father a man, so why should we call the Son a man?
Hallelujah.
Baruch Hashem Yahweh. That's classic. That's Tov. So this phraseology is found in various Dead Sea Scrolls, meaning Yahweh, the man of war, the rebuker of evil. It's very similar to the language found in the Bible. You don't say. This phraseology is also found, listen, in latter incantations and amulets associated with the land of Israel. Evidence that these artifacts were also amulets, researchers concluded. In ancient world, amulets were taken quite seriously. Dr. Zuckerman said, there's evil out there, demons, and you need protection. Having this around your neck, you are involving Yud He Vav He's presence and protection against them. Listen to this. Dr. Estelle Eshel, professor of the Bible at Bar Ilan University in Yerushalayim, and an authority on Hebrew inscription, said this was the earliest example of amulets from Israel. But she noted that the language of the Aaronic benediction was similar to the blessing, may he bless you and keep you. It is similar to a jar found in the 8th century BC. This is a nice Jewish girl who was a professor. I'm sure she's not a believer. She said the writing and the blessing found on this amulet, Yivarechecha Yahweh v'yishmerecha, is almost similar and identical to a jar dated, not a Hebrew jar, but a jar dated the 8th century BC. This may be even before the two houses split.
Yes.
I'm sorry, before Ephraim was taken into captivity in 721. The two houses split in 921. This may even be the time that Ephraim was already in the land. This can go as far back as Isaiah. It certainly goes to the time of Jeremiah, for sure. But it may also go as far back as Isaiah.
Wow.
Meaning Isaiah had the same verse in his Bible or scroll that we have in ours. This is why you don't hear much about this in the media. You'll hear a lot about John Kerry and George Bush tonight. And Kerry has to smile. He can't look stiff. He can't look like Al Gore, even though he's Al Gore's clone. He can't look like Al Gore, and he can't come across like Al Gore. And George W. Bush, which stands for wrong war at the wrong time, according to John Kerry, can't look at his watch like his father looked at his watch. Because, like, where else are you supposed to be except the debate? Where are you going? Are you going to drive through McDonald's? And what are you looking at your watch for? So they're talking about, yeah, and then Chris Matthews is going to bring on, Andrew Mitchell, and they're going to sit there and analyze, reanalyze, and when they finish, reanalyze it, then they're going to bring in Joe Scarborough to analyze what the reanalyzer said. Then when Joe Scarborough's finished, they're going to bring in Pat Buchanan. And Pat Buchanan's going to reanalyze what the reanalyzer said. And then we're going to go like, not only, we're going to sit there for 2 hours and go, what does that mean? Tax cut for the middle class? I thought the middle class was tax cut for the middle class. So you're for the tax cut, he's for the tax cut. So if you're both for the tax cut, what's the difference? There is no difference. But he sucks, I don't. Huh? Who? What? He's for the tax cut, I'm for the tax cut. But he no good, I'm good. Then, because we don't know who said what and because we don't understand nothing, then we're going to have 3 hours of analysis to tell us what was really said. In the meantime, the biggest story of our day is...
Hallelujah.
Do you hear anybody talking about this? This is the most important. Do you know what this does for us as Yahwists? Do you understand this? This confirms that we are right?
Yes.
Hallelujah.
In the right place.
Hallelujah.
This is an amazing discovery.
Yahweh.
Hallelujah.
That's right.
Baruch Hashem Yahweh.
Oh.
Toda Rabba Yahweh. I'm going to close with this.
No, don't close.
There's nothing more to share.
Come on.
But I'm going to pass around the picture. I want to get to the sukkah and say the brachas
Oh,
of the lulav and the etro. So that, wait a second. Now this, where were these amulets found? This is the computer enhanced image. I'll pass this around. Where were these amulets found? This is the actual size. Right here is the actual size. Kfar Hino. But they were found in a bone repository with jewelry and other personal belongings. Were they not?
Were they gathered unto?
In other words, where they gathered the buried to their fathers. That's where they found this amulet. So apparently, wait a second. So apparently, when they gathered the bones to their fathers, they took valuables and jewelry and gathered those things too. And that's where this was found. In a bone repository. And guess who this was found by? Dr. Gabriel Barkay led the archaeological find, but he didn't really find it. Well, who found it? Well, I did have this. Here it is. Here's another picture. I'll pass this around. Let me show you who found. This gentleman was part of the archaeological team. But I want to close with this. This is the most remarkable discovery of our time. We learned that Yahweh was Yahweh in First Temple times. We learned that the scriptures have never changed. We now have a piece of scripture that predates the Dead Sea Scrolls, the greatest archaeological biblical discovery of our time, by 500 years. And that the common Israelite, not just the clergy, not the Kohanim, wore Yahweh's name around their neck as a defense from evil, unclean spirits. This is the most astounding discovery. Now, two things I want to share. I told you I wanted to share. Some Yahweh showed me. But I want to show you who found this, quote unquote found. Remember, those secret things that are secret belong to Yahweh. The things that are revealed belong to us and our children. So what is Yahweh doing in these last days? He's taking his things and turning them over to us so they become the property of us and our children. The biblical text dated in the 7th century BC is the oldest known date and predates the text found in the Dead Sea Scrolls, as I said, by 500 years. The word Yahweh appears in writing, think about this, for the first time ever. In other words, this is the oldest writing of Yahweh's name mankind has ever found. The Isaiah scrolls of the Dead Sea have Yahweh's name, but this is the oldest recorded time that Yahweh's name has ever been found. So for us, this is the first time. This is the first